Hey guys, my name is Michael O'Rourke. I'm a Level 2 USAC certified cycling coach, AFA certified personal trainer, co-owner and co-operator of Proactive Personal Training and Fitness Education here in Auburn, California, the self-proclaimed endurance capital of the world. This is the first in a three-part series where I'm going to compare and contrast training zones based on FTP with training zones based on actual metabolic assessment, and that would be a lactate test or a VO2 test. We're also going to look at the potential benefits and pitfalls of any training plan based on those data sets. Now, in order to do that here in part one, we're first going to define and understand FTP. I mean, what is it anyway? And I'm willing to bet a large lunch at a drive-thru eatery that most, if not all of you watching right now, already think you know and understand what that means. But do you really? I'm sure you do know that FTP is an acronym for functional threshold power. But I'm willing to bet yet another large lunch at a drive-thru eatery that if I were to ask you what the most important component of that equation is, your answer would probably be power. And if it is, I'm here to tell you it's not. In fact, the most important components of that equation aren't even mentioned. And those components are energy and time. See, it's just been established and accepted in popular nomenclature that FTP represents the maximal sustainable power for 60 minutes. And there's good reason for that. And in order to understand, let's have a look at the next slide. Let's have a look at this athlete's critical power curve. Think of it as your Strava PR curve. And here's where I'd like to point out that FTP and CP, or critical power, are essentially the same thing. They're interchangeable terms because they're both time dependent. And what do I mean? Well, this athlete's 30-second maximal sustainable power is entirely different than his maximal sustainable power for 3 minutes, which is different than 20 minutes, and 60 minutes, 2 hours, even 3 hours if we were to extend it out that far. And there's good reason for that. Here's where energy comes into the equation. The energy supply for the shortest of efforts comes from the creatine phosphate system. The anaerobic glycolytic system fuels the intermediate efforts. And then as you approach and surpass 60 minutes, the energy supply is almost completely aerobic, with negligible contribution from the anaerobic systems. And because there's so little variation from 60 minutes onward, this can be considered your anaerobic threshold, which is what you base your training zones on. And here's just another graphic representation to drive home the point. Keep in mind, these graphs are based on maximal efforts. And as you can see, the creatine phosphate system is good for about 10 to 12 seconds of effort, and within 15 seconds, it's almost completely depleted, where the glycolytic engine takes over, but at the cost of power. And the same thing happens between the glycolytic system and the aerobic system with another drop in power, right? And something I'd like to point out too is that that crossover point between the glycolytic system and the aerobic system happens within 1 to 2 minutes, a lot sooner than most people would think. So remember we said that FTP has been established and accepted as a maximal 60-minute effort. Well, if you really want to find out what that is, slather yourself in honey, give yourself a 10-second head start in front of the hungry bear just out of hibernation, and don't stop till the bear does. See, my point is, it's hard enough for pros to stay focused, driven, and on the rivet for 60 unwavering minutes. Most amateur athletes and enthusiasts can't do that. They can't truly push their body to the absolute limit for 60 minutes. And if you're going to base your training zones on your maximal 60-minute power, that's what you have to do. But for most sub-elite athletes, they can suck it up and stay focused for 20 minutes. So the 20-minute field test was born. See, it's been discovered that for most people, 95% of their 20-minute power is a fair representation of their sustainable 60-minute power, and thus their anaerobic threshold. For most of the population, this is going to get you in the ballpark of good training. But there are always outliers and exceptions, and unfortunately, 20 minutes is a short enough time frame that a significant portion of the energy contribution can come from the anaerobic system, and thus skew your results or your calculation of that 60-minute effort and throw off your training zones. And without further testing, either field testing or better yet, metabolic assessment, you don't really have any way to know that. For more on this, please check out our next segment. For more answers or information on performance testing and endurance training, please visit the website you see on your screen. Until next time.